Hello, and welcome to another episode of LUMcast. If you're new here, I'm Andrew Silas, your host, and this is the podcast where we explore the fascinating stories, ideas, and questions that light up our minds, hence the name Light Up Minds. Whether you're listening from home, on your commute, or while relaxing with a cup of coffee, I'm so glad you've joined us. This is our second episode, and I've got an incredible topic lined up for you today. It's one that combines biology, history, and the human story in a way that I promise will keep you hooked from start to finish. So, let me ask you this. Have you ever stopped to wonder why, out of all the incredible diversity of life on Earth, there's only one species of human alive today? That's right, just us, Homo sapiens. Think about it. We're surrounded by millions of species, plants, animals, microbes, but when it comes to humans, there's no diversity in species anymore. But here's the kicker. It wasn't always this way. If we rewind the clock tens of thousands of years, there were other species of humans walking this planet. Neanderthals, Denisovans, and even the mysterious Homo floresiensis. Each had their own adaptations, their own way of life, and yet today, they're all gone. Only we remain. What happened? How did we end up as the sole survivors of the human lineage? That's the mystery we're going to unravel today. We'll dive into the science of evolution, the history of human ancestors, and the factors that may have given Homo sapiens the edge over others. Along the way, we'll uncover surprising facts, thought-provoking ideas, and even a few lessons about what it means to be human. So settle in, get comfortable, and let's start at the very beginning. What is a species anyway? Before we tackle why Homo sapiens is alone today, we need to start with the basics. What even is a species? It might sound like a simple question, but the answer is surprisingly complex, especially when it comes to humans. Let's break it down. In biology, the most common definition of a species comes from something called the biological species concept. According to this idea, a species is a group of organisms that can interbreed and produce fertile offspring. For example, lions and tigers are distinct species because while they can mate, their offspring, called ligers, are usually sterile. That reproductive barrier is what keeps species separate. But here's where it gets tricky. When we look at the history of Homo sapiens, we don't fit neatly into this definition. Why? Because we know that our ancestors interbred with other human species, like Neanderthals and Denisovans. Yes, you heard that right. Genetic studies show that many people today, particularly those of European, Asian, or Oceanic descent, carry small amounts of DNA from these other species. For instance, if you have European ancestry, about 1.2% of your DNA likely comes from Neanderthals. If your roots trace back to Oceania, you might have up to 4% Denisovan DNA. This blurs the lines of what we traditionally think of as a species. After all, if Homo sapiens interbred with Neanderthals and Denisovans, were we really separate species? Or were we more like closely related subspecies? The answer isn't clear-cut, and it forces us to rethink what it means to be a species. But it also opens the door to an even bigger question. If we weren't always alone, what did the human family tree look like in the past? To answer that, we need to dive deeper into the past and explore the incredible diversity of the Homo genus. To understand why Homo sapiens is the only species of human alive today, we need to go back, way back. The story of humanity isn't a straight line. It's more like a sprawling family tree with branches growing, splitting, and sometimes withering away. So let's travel millions of years into the past to meet our earliest ancestors. The origins of the Homo genus. The Homo genus, which includes us, Homo sapiens, first appeared about 2.5 million years ago in Africa. The earliest known member is Homo habilis, often called the handyman because of its association with simple stone tools. Homo habilis wasn't tall, about 4 feet on average, and had a smaller brain compared to us, but it marked a turning point. This was the beginning of humans using tools to interact with and shape their environment. From there, the Homo family grew. Homo erectus emerged around 1.9 million years ago and was a true pioneer. This species was the first to leave Africa, spreading into Europe and Asia. Homo erectus was taller with a larger brain and is thought to have mastered the use of fire. Imagine that, our distant relatives sitting around campfires, cooking food, and possibly sharing early forms of communication. A crowded planet fast. Forward to around 300,000 years ago, and the world became a much busier place for the Homo genus. By this time, there were multiple human species coexisting, each adapting to their unique environments. Neanderthals, Homo neanderthalensis, stocky and strong, Neanderthals were built to survive the cold climates of Europe and Western Asia. They hunted large animals, used tools, and may have even buried their dead, a sign of possible cultural or spiritual beliefs. Denisovans, a mysterious species we know mostly from genetic evidence. They lived in parts of Asia, but their physical appearance remains largely unknown due to the scarcity of fossil evidence. Homo floresiensis, the hobbit. Discovered on the Indonesian island of Flores, this species stood just 3 feet tall. With their diminutive size and primitive tools, they seemed more like relics of an ancient past, yet they thrived alongside modern humans for thousands of years. Each of these species had its own adaptations and survival strategies. Neanderthals, for example, developed physical traits to endure harsh winters, while Denisovans contributed genetic adaptations to high-altitude living that we still see in Tibetan populations today. Coexistence and interaction. What's fascinating is that these species didn't just exist in isolation, they interacted. Genetic evidence shows that Homo sapiens interbred with Neanderthals and Denisovans. These weren't rare encounters. They happened multiple times over tens of thousands of years. Imagine a world where humans of different species met, sometimes trading, sometimes fighting, sometimes forming relationships. It's a reminder that the human story is far more complex than we once thought. The question of extinction. But here's the mystery. By about 40,000 years ago, all these other species were gone. Neanderthals, Denisovans, and Homo floresiensis all disappeared, leaving Homo sapiens as the sole survivor. Why did this happen? What gave Homo sapiens the edge? To answer that, we need to look closer at the unique traits and behaviors of our species. Next, we'll explore the critical question: what made Homo sapiens different? Why did we survive when others didn't? So, we've set the stage. There were multiple human species, each thriving in its own way. But then, one by one, they vanished, leaving Homo sapiens as the last one standing. Let's unpack the reasons behind this and see if we can piece together the puzzle. Competition for resources. First, let's talk about competition. Imagine a landscape where different human species are hunting the same animals, gathering the same plants, and seeking the same shelters. Resources were finite, and competition was fierce. Homo sapiens had some key advantages. For one, we were incredibly adaptable. While Neanderthals specialized in hunting large game in cold climates, Homo sapiens diversified their diets. We hunted a wider range of animals, gathered a broader variety of plants, and even fished. This flexibility likely gave us an edge when resources were scarce. Our social structures also played a role. Homo sapiens formed larger, more complex groups, which allowed for better cooperation and resource sharing. A Neanderthal hunting party might consist of a few individuals, while Homo sapiens could mobilize dozens. More people meant more strategies, more tools, and more success. Climate challenges. Next, consider the environment. Around 40,000 years ago, the Earth experienced dramatic climate shifts. Ice ages brought colder, drier conditions, making survival even harder. Homo sapiens adapted by innovating. We created better clothing, built sturdier shelters, and developed advanced tools. Neanderthals, on the other hand, were physically adapted to the cold, but lacked the same level of cultural innovation. When the climate pushed their limits, they struggled to survive. Disease and pathogens. Now, here's a theory that doesn't get enough attention. Disease. As Homo sapiens migrated into Europe and Asia, they may have brought diseases with them, pathogens that Neanderthals and Denisovans had no immunity against. This is a pattern we've seen throughout history. Think about how smallpox devastated indigenous populations in the Americas when Europeans arrived. Could a similar scenario have played out tens of thousands of years ago? It's a chilling but plausible explanation. Interbreeding and genetic swamping. Remember those interbreeding events I mentioned earlier? While they left a genetic legacy, they might also have contributed to the extinction of other species. When Homo sapiens interbred with Neanderthals and Denisovans, their populations may have become genetically absorbed into ours. Over time, their distinct traits could have been diluted, leading to their eventual disappearance. Cultural superiority. Finally, let's talk about culture. Homo sapiens weren't just surviving. We were thriving in ways that went beyond basic survival. Around 40,000 years ago, something extraordinary happened, a cultural explosion. We started creating art, cave paintings, carvings, and musical instruments. We developed complex languages, enabling us to share knowledge and pass it down through generations. These cultural advancements weren't just nice-to-haves, they were survival tools. Art may have strengthened social bonds, language allowed for better coordination during hunts. These factors combined to make Homo sapiens incredibly resilient. The final puzzle piece. Of course, these are just theories, and the truth is likely a combination of many factors. Climate, competition, disease, and culture all played roles in shaping the fate of humanity. But one thing is clear. Homo sapiens didn't just outlive the others. We outthought, outadapted, and outlasted them. So, what exactly made us unique? And let's take a closer look at the traits and behaviors that set Homo sapiens apart. So, what exactly made Homo sapiens different? How did we outlast and outadapt other human species like Neanderthals, Denisovans, and Homo floresiensis? Let's break it down. Our big, complex brains. One of the most obvious differences between Homo sapiens and other human species is the size and complexity of our brains. While Neanderthals actually had slightly larger brains on average, size isn't everything. It's about how those brains were wired. Homo sapiens developed the ability to think abstractly, solve problems creatively, and plan for the long term. This allowed us to innovate in ways other species couldn't. For example, we didn't just create tools, we improved them, making them more efficient and specialized. A simple stone tool might evolve into a spearhead or a fishing hook over time, thanks to our ability to think critically about problems and solutions. Language, the ultimate tool. Language was perhaps the single most important factor that set Homo sapiens apart. While Neanderthals likely had some form of communication, it was probably limited compared to the complexity of human language. With language, we could share knowledge across generations. We could teach each other how to make tools, hunt more effectively, or navigate new environments. More importantly, language allowed us to form tighter social bonds, which made cooperation and teamwork possible on a scale that other species couldn't match. Imagine two groups of early humans. One has a basic form of communication, gestures, simple sounds. The other has a fully developed language. Which group do you think would be better at organizing a hunt or defending against predators? Language wasn't just a tool, it was a superpower. Cultural creativity. Around 40,000 years ago, Homo sapiens experienced what scientists call a cultural explosion. Suddenly, we began creating art, music, and rituals. Cave paintings in places like Lascaux, France, and Chauvet-Pont d'Arc are stunning examples of early human creativity. Why does this matter? Because culture isn't just about expression, it's about connection. Art and rituals helped strengthen group identity and fostered cooperation. Music and storytelling likely played a role in teaching, bonding, and even calming fears during tough times. This cultural creativity also gave Homo sapiens a way to imagine and plan for the future. The ability to think symbolically, to visualize something that doesn't yet exist, was crucial for innovation and adaptation. Adaptability, thriving anywhere. Perhaps the most defining trait of Homo sapiens was our adaptability. Unlike Neanderthals, who were specialized for cold climates, or Homo floresiensis, who thrived on a single island, Homo sapiens could live almost anywhere. This adaptability came from a combination of traits. Tool use. We crafted tools suited to different environments, from fishing gear for coastal areas to hunting weapons for open plains. Social networks. By forming alliances with other groups, we could share resources and knowledge. Cultural flexibility. When conditions changed, so did our strategies. If a particular food source became scarce, we found alternatives. The role of cooperation. While other species likely lived in small, isolated groups, Homo sapiens formed larger communities, and this cooperation extended beyond immediate families, creating vast social networks. Why was this important? Because in larger groups, people could specialize. Some focused on hunting, others on crafting tools, and others on gathering or teaching. This division of labor made Homo sapiens more efficient and resilient. Additionally, cooperation made innovation possible. New ideas could spread quickly within and between groups. If someone invented a better way to hunt or a new kind of tool, that knowledge didn't stay isolated. It became a shared resource. Spirituality and symbolism. Another unique aspect of Homo sapiens was our capacity for spirituality and symbolic thought. Burial sites from tens of thousands of years ago suggest that early humans had rituals and possibly even beliefs about the afterlife. Why does this matter? Because shared beliefs can unify a group, they create a sense of purpose and identity. While it's impossible to know exactly what early humans believed, the evidence of symbolic behavior shows a depth of thought that likely set us apart from other species. Did you know that even though Neanderthals and Denisovans are extinct, they're not completely gone? That's right, they live on in us. Let's talk about the incredible genetic legacy these species left behind. Interbreeding, the genetic mix. When Homo sapiens migrated out of Africa around 70,000 years ago, they encountered other human species. These weren't rare meetings. They happened often enough to leave a lasting impact on our DNA. Today, people of European and Asian descent carry about 1 to 2% Neanderthal DNA. Those with oceanic ancestry can have up to 4% Denisovan DNA. This genetic mixing wasn't just a historical curiosity, it shaped who we are today. Benefits of ancient genes. Some of the genes we inherited from Neanderthals and Denisovans were beneficial. For example, immune system genes. Neanderthal DNA includes adaptations that helped early humans fight off infections in new environments. Altitude adaptation. Denisovan DNA is linked to the ability to thrive at high altitudes, a trait still seen in Tibetan populations. These genetic contributions gave Homo sapiens an edge as they spread across the globe. Challenges of ancient genes. But it wasn't all good news. Some inherited genes are associated with health issues like autoimmune diseases and allergies. This shows that the legacy of interbreeding is a mix of benefits and drawbacks, a global mosaic. What's fascinating is how this genetic legacy varies across populations. For example, people in Africa have little to no Neanderthal or Denisovan DNA because these species lived outside the continent. In contrast, people in Europe and Asia carry more of these ancient genes. This makes modern humans a mosaic, a blend of our Homo sapiens ancestors and the other species we encountered. So, what does all of this mean for the story of humanity? Let's wrap it up with some final thoughts. As we close today's episode, let's take a step back and reflect on everything we've explored. We started with a simple yet profound question. Why is there only one species of human alive today? Through this journey, we've uncovered a story of competition, adaptation, and connection. Homo sapiens didn't just survive, we thrived. Our ability to think, innovate, and cooperate set us apart. But we're not the sole authors of our story. Neanderthals and Denisovans contributed to who we are, leaving a legacy that lives on in our DNA. This isn't just a story about extinction. It's a story about evolution, resilience, and the interconnectedness of life. So, as you go about your day, take a moment to appreciate the incredible journey that brought us here. Humanity's past is written in our genes, our cultures, and our shared curiosity about the world. Thank you for joining me on this exploration. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe to LUMcast and share it with someone who loves a good mystery. Until next time, stay curious and keep lighting up minds.